Okay, so Ali is asking, what do you see as the main blocker to companies adopting a DevOps culture?
Wow, I like this one. So the last like 5 years or so, I've really wound up over and over working with management teams that are trying to do digital transformations in the testing space. And what I'm kind of at the end of that cycle of work now, and actually right now I'm actually talking to people this week about transitioning into more of a developer role again. But it's really, I think, interesting and necessary to get like a high level view of what goes on in these discussions and what fails and what works. So I mean, the number one thing that I think I see overall is managers trying to fix a thing that isn't broken or isn't broken in the way that they think it is. There's a tendency, I think tech is especially guilty of it. There's a tendency in business in general to believe that there is a general, a magic bullet solution that will that somehow if you just change a bunch of parameters of the business, then all of the systemic problems of the business will be solved. And management consulting is in a lot of ways just including like Harvard Business School, like this that's a management consulting is largely like just selling that idea without a whole lot of substance. So there's a lot of that out there, and it there's a lot of like interesting sociological reasons about why that is. It's just, I mean, there's a lot of middle management is a big part of corporate structure, and part of being middle management is, as anybody's ever had to do it knows, is that you got to show quarterly progress. Quarterly progress is really different than annual progress or decade progress, as we all know. And a lot of times, showing quarterly progress means showing progress broken down into 2-week cycles or spreads, right? Because 2 weeks, 2-week cycles fit neatly into a quarter. That's why we have 2-week cycles. So a lot of times when there's an attempt to like adopt DevOps, and this comes back to what I said about a lot of management consulting just being sort of empty process as a service. It's less weird than it sounds in that a lot of times as a middle manager, the job is just to show movement in a direction. Right. It's not, no one's ever going to be evaluated on success, or no one's even going to be evaluated on an outcome. People are going to be, and this is true, this is not true everywhere. This is true of a lot of organizations. And if you're having trouble adopting any kind of new practice, you might ask yourself if your organization does this pattern. It's certainly not the end of the world. It's just something that it's a constraint to certainly be aware of if you're not taking into account, is that a lot of corporations can't see past the end of the quarter. And so bringing in a bunch of process and showing that a lot of progress has been made over 3 months toward something new is often enough. And if it dissipates after that, or if it dissipates after the end of the contract, like no one's ever evaluated on that. And so a really hard truth of a really kind of disillusioning truth that one has to grapple with when one does these kind of corporate transformations for work is that a lot of times a lot of times it really just came down to someone showing progress over a short period of time. It really was never about, the entire project is just not about changing anything long term. And so I do think as an IT professional in general, like being, as I was slowly, and this is something I've only really been clued into. This is a point of view I've only come to accept in recent years as I've done more work around transformations, is that it just like a lot of what we talk about as like team dysfunction or dysfunction could be understood as just extreme short-term thinking, because we have a corporate system that rewards quarterly success and basically nothing else. So that aside, the other thing, so there's just like a short list of like just technical things that make it hard, which like one is like a bunch of really slow legacy tests, which is easy to solve because you can just get rid of them, because if there's no understanding of what a test does, it's not valuable and can just be removed. And there's case studies where I've done this and other orgs have done this. The other thing is like a lack of a feedback loop about where money's being lost or where money's being spent to mitigate production issues. Sometimes organizations are just really siloed and like dev isn't aware. That's always worth looking at. I mean, that's something as a consultant that I've learned to always do. People in siloed organizations, that's one of the reasons silos are not desirable, is that people in siloed organizations really tend to other the people outside their silo. And so it's very common to come to a stakeholder and they're like, well, people in this other team, they're just like, we need all of these things. They won't do any of it for us. And I've learned as a consultant that the first question out of my mouth is, after listening, do they know? Like, are you sure they know? Like, are you sure they've been informed? And it's interesting how many times the question is no. It's not always like a solvable problem. Often it points back to the kind of entrenched short-term corporate thinking that I was talking about, where it's like, no, they don't know, because to do that would require political capital that would make me have to extend myself beyond this quarter. And if I do that, I am afraid for my job. So this is a reason that there's this idea of just coming in and working bottom up as a developer and just basically, like, rather than trying to get the whole org to change, just sort of providing a path forward for your team, and that and eventually slowly turning the ship that way. I mean, that's why in a lot of cases that's a more viable solution. I mean, progress is extremely slow, but it is possible to make progress across the quarterly boundaries that way, simply because it is happening on a small scale.
So it sounds like the main blocker is that short-term perspective then.
I think
many orgs have.
That is 100% what I think after being involved with this many transformations and redesigns for this long, over this many years, is that there's a lot of anecdotes out there about how organizations change direction, and they are exactly that. They are anecdotes. I think that's one of the great things about conferences. It's one of the great things for me about conferences, certainly, is that I get a chance to sit down with people who are associated with some of these anecdotes and ask them in detail about what happened. And it's something I really recommend doing. It's what people see on the ground is very different than what's necessarily. It's very different because the audience for a case study or a book is a CEO who's going to bring in a high level person who's going to hire the rest of us, right? I mean, and that's fine. It's just, again, I think it's something that's really it's a limitation of case studies and books that's really important to keep in mind, is that ultimately this is written by somebody who wants like an IT department to like try to pivot to this, not necessarily by somebody who actually has like caused a pivot.
Right.
And that's an important distinction. I guess like the constructive, I mean, that's like a big bummer, I know. But the constructive thing that I would want to leave everybody with is that, like, I think that the most rampant problem in computer programming in the enterprise right now is the urge to fix what is not broken. And I mean, we all like to make fun of JavaScript frameworks. 10 years ago, it was Java frameworks. Like it's an inevitable, terrible urge that we all have. And so I think that that's the number one thing. If the DevOps transformation seems like it might be about to go sideways, is to just reassess and say, how much of this is what we see as DevOps. How much of this do we actually need? Like, how much of this, what are the kind of the same way you would solve a, programming problem, is like, what are the concerns? What are the problems that we actually need to solve? And then which of the things in this big package of DevOps stuff that we're like supposed to do, which of those things actually would solve the problems? And you're absolutely allowed to pick and choose. Those are the successful teams, are the ones that are picking and choosing.